Hey everyone, LiveLock here. Today won't be a key review, or at least this video won't be a key review. Maybe there's another video that's a key review later on, but this video is a pre-patch announcement wish list. There's a bunch of things that I like and don't like, a lot of things I don't like actually, about the current expansion. And this is sort of like maybe like a pre-declaration of what they are. Hopefully some of them are addressed in the actual announcement, although I don't think they will be. I think it'll just be like, here's like a bunch of dragon stuff for next patch. Nothing really important on the screen just yet. This is like a 20 necrotic wig that we did as B-roll for the background, but it is important somewhat because of all the Mythic Plus complaints that I have in this video, which I'll start with my handy little notepad here. The first wish list item that I have for Mythic Plus is going to be a complete overhaul of the affix system. Now, I don't know how many of these will be controversial or well received, but I do know that we have sites like mythicplus.us or mythicpl.us. I guess it's like plus is the dot there. But, I mean, the title of this site is What Garbage Affix Do I Deal With This Week? And that's not like a bad title, to be honest, because that's how most people feel. I mean, that's at least how I feel about most of the affixes. So, like, this week in the video is Sanguine Storming, which is just, like, awful to deal with as, like, a melee DPS. Like, this pull in particular, I'm trying to live by not stepping into the frontal, but if you get booped into Sanguine, like, where can you stand? Like, what is happening? It's just such a pain, and I never really accept that, you know, you can play around these things, like, if you're good enough, because, like, it's a video game, and it should be, like, not stressful, it should be fun, right? Like, all of these things are so weird that they exist for so long in this game. Like, whoever in their right mind would like this storm? Look at 4 storming tornadoes. Why? What is this adding to the game? So, looking at the list of affixes here on the site, well, first of all, what do we have next week? Raging Explosive. So, Raging is fine to me because it basically doesn't exist. That's why it's fine. And I cannot stand Explosive. I had to turn off the unit frames on Explosive just so I, like, pretend they don't exist, and my healer deals with it, basically. So, why is this next week going to be good? Because I pretend that there are no affixes. So, like, we play Mythic Plus despite the affix system, not because of it. Like, it's exclusively, like, a worse thing in almost every case, I think. Then we have Bursting Volcanic. Bursting is not a problem because we don't care about it, right? Because we just pretend it doesn't exist. We have a priest, so you just cast Mist Dispel, right? Your Mass Dispel, and it's gone. Volcanic, while most people think it's a non-affix. When I play my Shadow Priest, it really, like, triggers me pretty hard for some reason. Just like getting booped up in the air when you're casting something because you forgot to look at your feet constantly. Like, man, the affixes in this game are just like really, really, really not great. Like, honestly, my Warlock teammate had a suggestion that maybe some weeks you just get Fortified and Tyrannical, and that would be like an amazing gameplay experience because you just play the actual dungeon. So, I mean, what do we have for our level 4 affixes? Bolstering is either terrible in previous seasons or it's a non-issue in this season, right? Now you've waited out, so that's how you deal with it. Bursting is a non-issue because the healer has to deal with it. If you kill the first pull in Plaguefall, you'll die if you kill all the slimes at once, right? That's a thing you have to do. Raging is a tank thing. Usually tanks can handle it just fine. Inspiring, not a huge deal. You just have to make sure that, like, you CC sometimes, but usually you don't CC. Usually you just funnel into the inspired mob, so it's not an issue either. Sanguine is a tank affix. It's just, like, you know, really, really annoying for the tank to play. Sanguine weeks are the weeks where you can't find good pug tanks because they don't want to deal with Sanguine. So that's a thing. Spiteful, it's like not an issue basically, unless you're melee and you stand in too much. So it's just like a little gotcha. The level 7 affixes, I personally really hate Explosive. Grievous is not a huge deal. It's a healer affix. Like, it's good because it doesn't exist to me, right? It's not good because it's like making me make some interesting choices. It's good because I don't have to care about it. Necrotic is a tank affix, makes it impossible to pug tanks. Quaking is just very, very annoying. Very annoying for healers as well. And then Storming, everyone knows my feelings on Storming by this point. So I just think that, like, these affixes they don't make me ever want to play the game. I always want to play the game despite these affixes. And the system as a whole could be such that these were fun affixes or they made you make interesting choices. the big problem with these, I think, is that there's really strong differences between good and bad weeks. And if we can get rid of one thing, it's just like getting rid of good and bad weeks, because I'm going on vacation next week, right? So if it's a good week, what's that mean for me? It means that I don't get to play that good week, right? So I lose out on the push week in the form of IO, unfortunately. I I really hope that they just like rethink like what an affix means, what it's supposed to be, like what their metrics for success are for affixes. Like fun should be somewhere in there because it's definitely still a video game. But that's like my number one thing. I mentioned that the good and bad weeks shouldn't be so stark, and I think that's important because it makes no sense to me that like in Overwatch, I never don't play Overwatch because it's a bad week, right? I mean, every week is a bad week for Overwatch, so I guess that's a trick question, but there's no differences in the game inherently week to week. I can always just play it if I have time. Um, I have a lot of complaints this patch about floor effects in dungeons. Like, it's kind of crazy that this has like gone on for this long, but I've got like a DOS run here, and I think everyone knows about this death speaker. Here's the death speaker pull. First of all, the floor effects here, every floor effect in WoW has a gradient as it fades out towards the edge, so you can't exactly tell if you're in it or not in it. So there's like a little bit of guesswork involved there. And then this frontal, I don't know who made this frontal, but it's purple on purple from a purple mob on other purple mobs with other purple floor effects. Like, why? Why is that a thing? This is like the one good thing I thought that Final Fantasy had. Like, I didn't like Final Fantasy at all, but they had like really good like contrast between the different like floor effects. Do I get hit there? I do get hit there, of course. Um, but this is like something that's really really easy to fix. Something that I don't know how it's taken so long to stop doing things that way, but just like being able to know what's gonna happen on the floor is like a really valuable thing. And I mean, it could be like an intern project that they just do right now, just like update the effects so that people can actually tell. I have no idea how people play this game if they're colorblind or visually impaired, like whatsoever. I think it's probably just impossible. Um, the next on the list is Mythic Plus as a first-class endgame system. So this will be, I think people will probably disagree with this one the most, but as someone who doesn't raid at all, I really dislike that Mythic Plus is, like, it feels sometimes like the game is made by, like, elitist raiders, and they're like, well, what do raiders have to do in, like, their downtime after raid? Because we lock them out each week. Like, I guess they can play Mythic Plus. So Mythic Plus is, like, spammable. It's, like, it's not a first-class endgame system in terms of power levels. It's always behind the raid. They nerf Mythic Plus so that they can't use Mythic Plus as a crutch for gear acquisition in raid early on in the raid, because Mythic Plus isn't like the endgame system. They don't really care if you were to like exploit Mythic Plus with raid gear. It's like the other way around. So Mythic Plus is like always the afterthought. If we could have a system where, like, you know, there are three like pillars of WoW endgame, which would be like raid, PvP, and Mythic Plus. At least in terms of combat. Like I don't care about like the non-combat systems so much. But in terms of combat, like if those were the three pillars and they were all equal, like how do they fix the problem between PvP and raid? They made PvP gear basically, or like the stats in PvP are different, and you wouldn't want that gear for raiding. Like that's how they fix that. So they could take a similar approach to Mythic Plus. Like they could make, you know, tier sets specific to different categories of the game. They could make gearing choices different. They could make gear just literally locked to different styles of the game. I know people that do a lot of crossover wouldn't like that so much, but like, this is weird. I don't know why we pulled this monstrosity, but this was exciting on this poll. Sorry, yeah, like if they could just make it so that Mythic Plus was an actual first class system, and you didn't have to like, you know, wait until raid was saturated with gear drops before you can actually level up your gear in Mythic Plus. Like basically that's what we do right now. And like that would go a long way towards just like making people that specialize Mythic Plus not get completely overshadowed by raiders, like especially early on in the patch, but even later on. Like I'll never have a 278 sigil. Like I'll just never Mythic raid, right? But it's very easy to get max eye level Mythic Plus gear. It's like trivial basically. You do like a 15 and you have a chance at it, and that's like doing a 15 and getting a chance at a 278 like ruby is way easier than, you know, just doing whatever the equivalent of a raid is, because you need to get into the raid, right? I like you can get lucky and get into the raid because there's like, you know, they need some raid group has like a slot open in LFG, and they need like a couple of people for the first boss for some reason. Like that's like possible, but it's just it's a very not balanced towards the Mythic Plus side. It's very much like a Raiders game with like a Mythic Plus like little accent on the side. So if they could make that the a viable focus, like people like me would really appreciate that. Um, the next big issue I have with the current game is RNG loot. So I didn't publish this video, but this was my vault for the shaman. I did vault on like 4 characters, but I like went all in on the shaman last week. I got 6 slots. I did normal raid, even though I hate raiding. I did like normal and LFG for the. Actually, I think it was all normal. I had all 265 slots. I had 6 slots in the vault, and I went to open my vault, which is what this is right here, and I got like complete dog poopy, all dog poopy, all options. So yeah, I got an ooze. I can't. I have pants here, but I have tier pants, so I can't take those. I already have a Shadowgrass totem, but I don't use it because I use IQD. Over here, I've got like rings that will never be over 265. I think they're all rings. And then like one trinket, like the Bells of Endless Feast trinket, which is like it's just not very good. Like it's not even a sigil. Like weeks like this, I think. Okay, so what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this is that a couple of system changes could make this very different. So what they can do here is they can enable loot pinning, which means like, okay, this week I don't none of these things are like great for me, or actually it would be more the case if 2 things were great for you, you could pin one thing to show up again in that same slot for like the next week. So that means like I can pin my ooze even though I'm going to take my 6 tokens this week, right? And then next week, if I want to take ooze, I could take ooze, or you know, I have 2 good items, so I pin one of them, I take the other one. Next week I decide, do I want to take the pinned one or not, or maybe I repin it and it's always there. I can carry it over 1 item at a time. If they were to do that paired with something like waiting, which would mean like, you know, every single week I get to add, you know, some like, you know, aspect focus on some targeted item. Like there'd be a little search box, I would find the item, it would give me a bonus 10% chance to roll that item, stacking week over week. So like I would be on my tanks, I would be waiting towards a blood spattered scale. So I don't get it the first week or the second week, so I wait it. Third week I have like a 20% increased chance to get it, and so on. So eventually I'm like guaranteed to actually get a scale. In that system it would take 10 weeks to guarantee it, but usually it would not be 10 weeks. Or it could be a higher waiting value. Just having some way to add some determinism, some control, some like strategy to your loot choices would be very much appreciated. Like our warlock almost had no tier at all this week, like just because he was very unlucky. Whereas like me, like I got 2 because I was lucky, and my rogue has 4 because he was like luckier, right? And there's nothing you can really do about that, and it just like feels bad. I mean, all of these are obviously like splitting hairs over the long term, but actually they're not, because I've gone 8 months into season before getting a blood spattered scale on my monk. I'm not sure. I've been very unlucky before, so this system would have helped me a lot in previous seasons. Another big problem I have is DPS cucking. So a prime example of this would be Theater of Pain. So right here in Theater of Pain, I picked Zav as an example, but there are other bosses where there's like good examples of this. Like another example would have been Necrotic Lake, the final boss. Like every boss that selects somebody who is likely going to be in their DPS cooldowns to stop playing the game for like 20 seconds. And then on this fight, it's even worse because you stop playing the game for 20 seconds. And then after that, you get a debuff. One of you gets a debuff so you can continue not playing the game happily. So right here, like I'm still popping off right now. Like I'm at 17k. Me and the rogue have to go down and fight each other, right? Like this isn't fun. This can't be avoided. We just have to deal with it, and it makes the overall in Theater of Pain like really weird. Like how do you judge someone's overall in Theater of Pain? You have to ask them how many times they were sent down on Zav, right? Or how many times they got the hands debuff on Lich Boss. Like these are all like such like why it could have been any other way and it would have been more fun. And at the end of the day, it comes down to like fun as a game for me. Like if it's not like a fun thing to do, then it shouldn't be like, you know, a heavy component of the game. Um, the last thing I have, which I think also might be controversial, is the whole aspect of like seasons. I think seasons kind of pigeonhole the devs into like a certain style of game. Like, how did we end up with the current system of like seasons? Like, because they never considered adding any other dungeons to Mythic Plus. Like, that's why we have seasons. And then seasons were solidified by Raider.io having ratings based on the current pool, which never changed. So now we have seasons with pools because, you know, it's just kind of like naturally evolved. But that doesn't mean it's the best system to actually have. Like, it means by definition we'll be locked into like 8 to 10 different categories of dungeons for like 6 months at a time, and that means that you can never just like do other dungeons that exist in this game, like if you want to, or for any like benefit. So like they have the new system of like doing Legion Mythic Plus, but like I would never do it because I don't get any rating for it, and there's rating in the game, and that's like, you know, that's the objective now. It's like can you push keys and get rating? So I'm never going to become good at those dungeons because I'll never play them enough because they come around once every 2 months. I'll never value them for like the actual end game goal, which is going to be rating. Like gear is one possible thing, but honestly, if the gear was that good, it would even be worse because like then I wouldn't get it and I'd be mad. So like I mean in games like Overwatch, for example, like there is rating, but maps don't matter, right? It's PvP, it's a different system, I know, but like there could be a system with rating where the maps didn't matter so much, where you could specialize in like doing different things. I'm not exactly sure how it would end up working, but all I know is if you have a fixed pool, then you're locked into long periods of like no content. And I think Blizzard definitely can't keep up with like content demands. Like that's the one thing that they definitely like have proven that they can't actually keep up with is is making content over long periods of time. It seems like they just like they don't have the process, the technology, they get burned out. I got really fooled here, by the way, on screen. I thought that guy was looking at me, and this guy was looking at me. But someone around me moved exactly the same way I did as the test. Anyway, those are the big Mythic Plus things. Like, all in all, I would like Mythic Plus to just be like, you know, a real endgame system that they put like a lot of time into. They actually value it. You can tell that they value it. It's like not a secondary thought. It doesn't get cut for some other content. Like, that would make me very much a happy WoW player in the next expansion. Now I've got some other rapid fire things which aren't necessarily related to Mythic Plus. One of the big things is just like fixing bugs. Like, it's kind of crazy how long they've actually fixed bugs, or how long they've gone without fixing bugs, without even addressing that they had bugs. Like, we play with the Warlock, and he was demo the entire pack, essentially. And whenever he would cast Dreadhounds on Wazala, they wouldn't work. There's a couple other places where this would happen. I think it would also happen in Sanguine Depths. But he went, like, 8 months with one of his abilities not working on one of the bosses that has a damage check, you know? It's like why? And he reports it in the bug forums, but they don't actually reply to their bug forums. Like, they don't read that. Or if they do read that, they don't tell you that they read that. So you never know if your bug report matters. It's very strange what they're doing. Like, they have QA, obviously, although there are those stories about them constantly firing all of their QA. Like, if they would just like say that they know about something and like they're choosing not to fix it, but then like say why they're choosing not to fix it, like, or just stop doing all the weird stuff that makes them have bugs. Like special kinds of floors are apparently like a problem for them. Like, this room has a special kind of floor for some reason. Like floor effects don't really work the same in here. Like, area targeted effects don't work the same in this room. I'm not sure why. Maybe because it's floating. I don't know. But I mean, they do things like this all the time. They do things like they have chandeliers that are solid, so that when you target, you know, your ring of peace on the ground, it'll hit the chandelier. Like, that's a very weird thing for them to do. Like, why can I always mistakenly put my earthquake on the ceiling because there's a chandelier, right? Those chandeliers should be grass. Like, they shouldn't be like foliage. They shouldn't be something that would tank your actual abilities. So, less bugs, less doing things that they know will end up with bugs, right? I would love that. Another thing I would love is, it's along the lines of like being more or being less opaque. Just like if they would just state their intentions with certain specs, like what made me think about this was Mistweaver. Mistweaver has just been in like in a terrible state in Mythic Plus at least for like the entire expansion. Like I'm just very confused why like if I want them to say how much damage do they think Mistweaver should do, and how much damage do they think a shaman or a paladin should do, and then say like something about why they think there should be a 10k DPS difference between between those two specs. Maybe 10's not 10's not fair. On some polls, I mean it's fair, but I mean you'll end up with like 3k DPS as like Mistweaver. You'll end up with like 6 or 7k DPS as a shaman. Like, what justifies that difference in Mythic Plus when really the big like in this case it's even stranger because what they could do is just say 5 times the damage on spinning crane kick, right? And that would probably fix the problem actually. But they don't do that. But I don't know why they don't do that. That's like that's like the confusing part to me. Is like why don't they do that? What do they want Mistweaver to be in Mythic Plus, and why do they want that to be the case? Because I'm at a loss in terms of some of those specs. So if they would just like be a bit more transparent with their intentions behind different specs, then I would at least know that like they know about the weirdness that's present in the game right now. Another thing is just having details in like their patch notes. Like they recently nerfed Destruction Warlock. I think they said something like they reduced like the proc rate of their whatever was giving them like soul fragments during AoE, but like they didn't say they reduced it by 10% or so. So that means that we have to rely on third-party sites like Wowhead, right, to data mine that stuff, or do tests, or we have to watch YouTube videos where people like guess at what it's probably ending up at. So it's very weird they don't do that. Other games are very good about this. Like one of the games that my group plays when WoW is bad is Deep Rock Galactic, and the devs of that game are actually really, really good. So like if they would just act like other smaller developers, like that would be a pretty good change in and of itself. I don't want them to throw out everything between expansions. Oh yeah, I got killed there. What the hell? I got icy sharded. I think I got aggro through the spear. Yeah, keeping stuff between expansions. Like at this point, we've spent 2 years making Covenants good. Like there's some cool spells in here, like the Venthyr ability, Chain Harvest. Like that's a really cool spell. Like why we put all that time into making it just to like throw it out? Like Primordial Wave is good, but they're all very much themed based on the current tier. Like they aren't very dragony, right? That's kind of lame for them to not add more abilities or to like reskin them to be dragon-like. So if like I mean they're going this direction now of making previous content actually applicable to the current game. If they could just take the same philosophy and apply it to like gameplay talents and systems, like maybe for some dungeons next expansion we would actually choose to be Necrolord still, right? Like that would be probably a balancing nightmare for them, but just any kind of system where they don't have to literally throw out all the work that they did and all the feedback they incorporated into the system just to like I don't know, sell another box copy of an expansion would be. I mean, it seems like just a good practice even for them. Like, it's less work and it helps them with their content problems because they can just reuse content. One thing I really like about what oh, I got a typo in here. Focus on damage profiles. So the one thing I like about this expansion a lot, which is like not necessarily this expansion, but just in general on WoW, just like focusing on customizing your damage profile as a player. So like I have over here like a Shadow Priest damage profile. I can compare this with like a pretty level damage profile for my Enhancement Shaman, and then I can ask myself in our group like, okay, what are we missing? Are we missing burst single target? Because if so, like my Shadow Priest is going to fulfill that role pretty well. Are we missing funnel? Maybe I'll switch over to the Shaman and specialize a bit more in funnel. Or do we just need like consistent background damage, which is the case with like the Shaman most of the time, just like always something going on there. Just having something like this in the game where it's kind of like Deep Rock Galactic. Like in Deep Rock you basically can always spec out your character to do something like burst AoE or CC. So if they can just focus on that in this game, that'd be very fun. Because this is like the most fun part for me. Is just like controlling how I perform in dungeons. And then this one is an easy one. Everyone thinks this is true. No artificial restrictions on systems like conduit energy and no covenant swapping. Like that was all silly. I'm worried about this one because they never admitted they were wrong. So that's the big problem here. Like they did implement the change, but then there's that infamous paragraph where they claimed that they made the right choice originally, but now it was wrong. But they really made the wrong choice the entire time, and they never admitted it. They were wrong the entire time. So the expansion will be like a great test about like did any of the things that they claim they learned in this expansion actually matter, or were they just like throwing us bones to keep subs up? And we'll find that out I think pretty quickly in the beta, and if they ever take feedback. So this is my wish list. I have medium hopes for most of them. I've learned to like not expect that much, unfortunately, from the current dev team, but I do have hope. It's non-zero hope, and that's what's important. Let me know if you guys have any disagreements, especially with these Mythic Plus ones. Like these are the ones I really, really care about. Just like making the only thing I do in this game like more fun, right? That's what I care about. Let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next one.